Fisher.
Thank you, Mr Deputy Speaker. And I only hope I've got some time to address some of the issues that the member for Shortland has been on this absolute frolic. But I do want to get my speech out. I encourage him to listen on as he's driving home tonight. Mr Deputy Speaker, I've worked really hard in Fisher to bring back small business and manufacturing since my election in 2016. I've championed local makers and creators through my Made in Fisher and Support Sunshine Coast campaigns. I've celebrated leading innovators and businesses through the Fisher Community Awards, and I've worked with local, national and global businesses to cultivate a defence industry on the Sunshine Coast. Unfortunately, the Defence Industry Minister has just walked out the door. Now, 8 years on, the Sunshine Coast is emerging as a high-tech, high-value manufacturing hub, contributing to crucial supply chains in defence, health and food and beverages. I want to take a moment to highlight them for their grit, determination and their ingenuity. We've got craft brewers like Your Mates Brewing in Warana, Brouhaha in Baringa and Moffat Beach Brewing in Caloundra. We've got distillers like Stillmaker and Sons in Montville, Beech Tree Gin in Caloundra and the brand new Rare Orchard Distilling in Landsborough. Unfortunately, as you probably know, Mr Deputy Speaker, I don't drink, so I can't partake in any of those goods. But we've got other companies like Grease Boss who are absolutely transforming the way that large-scale mining and manufacturing their equipment is greased. Very important to have regular greasing, Mr Deputy Speaker. Helimods, run by Will Shrapnel, a great local business in Caloundra. Well, they do some fantastic work with their mission config systems, turning helicopters into mobile intensive care ambulances, and they are doing that around the world, and they are based in Caloundra. Now, they're also playing a vital role in the former coalition government's GhostBat program. AnyQuest is another local manufacturer in my electorate, and they create diesel generators for our Australian and New Zealand armies. They provide auxiliary power units to forward operating bases, to Bushmaster vehicles, to Hawkeye vehicles, and big shout out to Don Pulver and the great work and his team that they do there. Leakstar is using AI to monitor and condition water assets. Kilcoy Global, I see the member for Blair has walked into the chamber. Kilcoy Global, whilst the abattoir might be in his electorate, the head office is in mine. And this is a tremendous business, employs thousands of people around the country, and they've just gone and built a very extensive food manufacturing warehouse or a facility, not a warehouse, but they actually manufacture and package the food up. If you're like me, Mr Deputy Speaker, and you keep some of those meals in the freezer or your fridge at home, when you don't have time to cook something and you can whack it in the microwave, chances are that's come from Kilcoy Global. So a great local business, and I'm going to claim a member for Blair as being a Sunshine Coast business rather than a Blair-based business. It's just the abattoir in Blair, but the brains are in Caloundra. The brains of the operation are in Caloundra, as well as the manufacturing plant. King Truss is creating building and hardware supplies, a great local truss and wall manufacturers. I've been out to the team there. First Light Fabrication is creating and fabricating marine equipment. Nibro is manufacturing disability accessible vehicle modifications. In fact, big shout out to Nibro team who did my own daughter Sarah's modifications on her car. Wherever you turn, from the shores of Alex to the foothills of Mount Melham, you'll find Fisher manufacturers, primary producers and creators putting the Sunshine Coast on the map. Now, Mr Deputy Speaker, it's for those local manufacturers and small businesses that I stand today in opposition to this bill. The more we learn about this bill, the more we see the blatant truth, and that is that this Labor government has no plan for our economy, nor do they have a plan for our manufacturers or for sovereign capability. This legislation is nothing more than plain old-fashioned pork barrelling. It's a framework for big government and big bureaucracy. It's a proposal to increase the cost of doing business with Labor's big red stamp of approval. And it's another instance of this Labor government trying to spin their way out of trouble. It's a bill which demands that Australian families and their businesses look past the last 2 years of absolute chaos and trust Labor to make the right calls. That's what they're asking. They said, don't worry about what's happened over the last 2 years. Trust us. Trust us. We'll get it right. Well, last time a government said trust us, I think most Australians would say no thank you. After a litany of broken promises and a catalogue of crises, one thing is absolutely crystal clear. Australians do not trust this Prime Minister or this government to do the right thing. The bill provides for a national interest framework which would consider where government investment, that is, taxpayers' money, where it should go, based on a very narrow set of criteria. It expands the remit of Export Finance Australia and the Australian Renewable Energy Agency to fund domestic industries. Worse still, it puts the Treasurer and the Minister for Finance in charge of decision-making. Let me put this very simply. These laws will give the Treasurer the power to decide where to spend Australians' money. It is a slush fund, plain and simple, with nearly $4 billion in its coffers. This is the same Treasurer and the same government which has directed $13.7 billion and more into green energy pipe dreams, while ignoring the rising cost of energy, water and utilities. They poured millions of dollars into the Environmental Defender's Office, funding lawyers to sue the government. Green corporate welfare, green tape and over-regulation, investing in fanciful projects which the market is now abandoning because it makes for a good social media post. All of this paid for by taxpayers who are now paying 21% more in their electricity prices. They are now paying 22% more in their gas prices. Members of the government are living with their heads in the clouds if they think that Australian manufacturers are going to be able to be competitive with other countries around the world whilst this government continues to drive up energy prices with the member for McMahon's wild and crazy ideas. You know, when I was a kid, Mr Deputy Speaker, and you'd appreciate this, you used to play soccer, I believe, as a kid. You know, when you're playing soccer and you're on the sporting field and the opposition is giving you a hard time, you know, what did we used to say if we were up? We'd point to the scoreboard and say, "Scoreboard, old son, scoreboard." Well, scoreboard, look at what's happening to this country. Look at the cost of living. Look at what is happening in no small part because of the government's policies in relation to energy. How, in God's name, does this government think that our manufacturers are going to compete? Do you know, Mr Deputy Speaker, with all those companies that I spoke about earlier, I constantly get manufacturers saying to me, "Andrew, I'm just having so much trouble. I am having so much trouble keeping my head above water because the costs, you think the costs of running a household have gone sky high. You ought to try the costs of being a manufacturer in Australia right now." And why? When you make things, you need to use energy. Let me say that again for those members opposite who may not understand. When you make things, you have to use energy, and that energy's got to come from somewhere. And with the folly of this government's rise and push for, 83% renewables in such a short time frame, our industries, our manufacturers are saying, well, I might as well shut up shop because I can't do what I've been used to doing and provide it for a similar price. I've either got to increase my prices significantly or I've got to stop doing what I'm doing. And that is to the eternal shame of this government. Because the reality is, Mr Deputy Speaker, and my side of politics has been derided for this for some time by the Greens, by Labor, but you know what? It is a truism. You can't run manufacturing with solar panels and wind turbines when the sun's not shining and the wind's not blowing. Even if you have very significant batteries, the sort of industries that manufacturers are trying to run. You try running a steel smelter or an aluminium smelter on renewables or batteries. At the moment, it can't be done. It cannot be done. Wouldn't it be nice? Yeah, it'd be nice. It'd be nice if I drove a Maserati, but the reality is that technology is not there. And the member for Shortland had the audacity to talk about deindustrialisation. This government is doing its level best to deindustrialise this country. And it beggars belief that those members opposite still want to talk about the car manufacturing industry when this government is driving local manufacturing into the ground. The member for Shortland also talked about and talked up the big game about defence manufacturing. Well, I'm sure I'm not the only person to say this to the member for Shortland, who's probably on his way home now. Local defence manufacturers, member for Shortland, are not happy with you because every defence industry contractor that I talk to that is based in Australia say the same thing to me, and that is that defence contracting in Australia has stopped dead. It has stopped dead because this government was so immersed in things like the voice referendum. It was so immersed in doing review after review after review that the money stopped for defence contractors. And a lot of these small defence contractors, by natural, it's axiomatic, they were small businesses. And when you choke a small business of cash flow, what happens? The small business dies. It withers on the grapevine. And so for the member for Shortland to come in here and start spruiking about defence industry manufacturing is patently wrong. It is patently wrong. I don't think I have spoken to an Australian defence industry contractor who is singing happy days right now. They are bleeding. They are hemorrhaging money. Now, some of those businesses, as I indicated, are in my electorate, but it's not just those in my electorate. It is right across this country. And it's because of the indecisiveness, the indecision. It's because power prices are so damn high in this country right now that Australian, and because this government seems to just do nothing in relation to defence industry, that these poor beggars are having to now lay people off. And what really concerns me is that they will have lost faith in Australia, in the Australian government, whether it's Labor or the Conservative. They will have lost faith in us But I want to assure them, hang tough, hang in there till the next election, because hopefully we will retake the reins again and we'll restore it.